welcome again to the Blythe Bookshelf. This is my sort of more laid-back accompaniment to the Blythe tapes, if you like. Blythe tapes being my interviews with writers and artists. And the Blythe Bookshelf is where I talk about books from my childhood and from the present day, which have inspired me in my reading and writing. And because the video which I did about the Doctor Who Target books went down very well and lots of people have liked it and said nice things about it, I thought that I would do a little spin-off from that. And when I did my talk about the Just William books, as you may remember if you've seen that, I did mention that I was going to be going through the Doctor Who Target books in order. Now I've decided that I won't immediately be doing that because I might be repeating myself an awful lot, and there are lots of very good guides to the Target books out there. So what I thought I would do is pick out some of my favorites and just have an occasional spin-off from this series where I talk about one or two, possibly up to a couple of dozen or so of my favorite Doctor Who novelizations. So if you want to know more about the general background to the Target books, there is the other general video about that, which I've already put up. This one is going to be specifically about one of the novelizations by the Grand Master of the Target novelization, Terrance Dicks. And it is, in fact, the novelization of the first ever Doctor Who story. It's called Doctor Who and an Unearthly Child by Terrance Dicks. Now, I believe it is the only one in the series to have Doctor Who and Anne as the title. The others are either and the, or just have the title of the story following them. So this was a book which came out at a very interesting time because there had just been a brief dispute with the Writers Guild, meaning that the Target novelizations had to be put on hold for a bit. And so this was the first Doctor Who novelization to come out in several months. It was released in October 1981 to tie in with the Five Faces of Doctor Who repeat season, which was happening that autumn. The first time anybody would have seen Doctor Who, An Unearthly Child, the story, since its first broadcast in 1963. It was at the suggestion of John Nathan Turner, the producer of Doctor Who at the time, that this story was novelized and was tied in to the repeat broadcast. Of course, there's some debate about the overall title of the story, and I know Doctor Who magazine go with 100,000 BC. The official DVD and video release have gone with An Unearthly Child. I'm very happy to use that title myself. That's the title which W.H. Allen Target went with for the title of the book. So a few things about, first of all, the sort of packaging and appearance of the novelization, and then I'll talk a bit about the content and give my opinion on it. It's the first one to have this lovely 80s neon shiny logo on it. If I tilt it slightly, you can see it's got this beautiful metallic embossing on it. It's the first one to have this logo, which was first shown on television with Tom Baker's story, The Leisure Hive, of course. Superimposed upon a painting by Andrew Skilleter, quite a straightforward painting of the TARDIS in a junkyard, the junkyard, of course, but this is based on a picture which I think is no longer available to refer to. It's not a very exciting cover. I mean, technically it's beautifully done, of course, but the other thing you might notice about it is that there is no William Hartnell on the cover, and that was in line with the policy that Target Books had at the time of having their books only featuring the current Doctor. So no past Doctors, and so past stories would be kind of no Doctor covers. So this is in line with the previous few from this era that have just come out: Enemy of the World, The Keys of Marinus, The Monster of Peladon, which didn't feature the Doctor on the cover. It has the title font in that very blocky lettering. I don't know what the font is. Someone will be able to tell you. But the author name is notable. Terrance Dicks' name is probably about as small as it ever got on the cover of a book. You have to squint to be able to read it. There's a lovely red spine and a red rear jacket, and I can't always promise that I will wear a T-shirt which matches or almost matches the cover of books that I'm talking about, but it's just coincidental on this occasion. There's a lovely flash at the bottom right as well, telling you that it is the first publication of the very first Doctor Who story. And it has the Target logo at the bottom right. As yet, no number on the spine or on the cover. They haven't started doing that at this point. The blurb is wonderfully melodramatic. Here's the blurb in capital letters. First publication of the very first Doctor Who story. A strange girl who knows far more than she should about the past and the future. Two worried teachers whose curiosity leads them to a deserted junkyard, an extraordinary police box, and a mysterious traveller known only as the Doctor. A fantastic journey through space and time, capitalized, ending in a terrifying adventure at the dawn of history. Doctor Who and an Unearthly Child, the beginning of a legend. Then underneath, we've got the list of the, among the many Doctor Who books available are the following recently published titles. That they went through a stage of doing that, which I thought was rather nice to make you available of, make you aware, sorry, of the books which have been most recently available. This paperback cost £1.25 in the UK, $4.50 in Australia, and it's designated as children/fiction. There was a reissue in the 1990s when a lot of the books were reissued, and it had the late 80s McCoy logo on, as all the 90s Blue Spine reissues had, with a cover by Alistair Pearson, which took its inspiration from the Queen album The Miracle, with the merging of the Doctor and Susan's faces, as you can see. There are a couple of editions from outside the UK as well, which we should mention. There was an edition published in 1987 in France by Éditions Garancière, and the translator was Jean-Daniel Brech. The title which it was given was Doctor Who Entre en Scène, and it was one of 8 novelizations to be translated into French, and each of the books was presented by these characters called Igor and Grichka Bogdanov. If you're not familiar with their work, these were 2 gentlemen who presented a sort of sci-fi and science program in France in the 80s called Temps X, and the French broadcaster had bought and dubbed into French a number of 4th Doctor stories in the 80s. So the novels were sort of tying in with these, and the covers, some of them look a little strange. The French novelization features an image of someone who looks almost, but not entirely, unlike William Hartnell. If you are going to Google Igor and Grichka Bogdanov, please do so very carefully. The German edition was published by Goldman Verlag in 1989. I don't know who the translator was. It's published as Doctor Who und das Kind von den Sternen, Doctor Who and the Child of the Stars. Lovely title. Again, 6 novelizations translated into German, published in the 80s, and it has, keen eyes may spot, the same cover as Doctor Who and the Keys of Marinus. There is out there another novelization which was intended as an audiobook, and this one is written by Nigel Robinson, which has never actually been released, making An Unearthly Child one of the few Doctor Who stories to have been novelized more than once. I believe there are some legal issues around the reason why this audiobook was never actually released, so perhaps we shouldn't delve too deeply into that here, but it would be interesting at some point to see it, if it ever does see the light of day, and compare what Nigel does with what Terrance does. So Terrance Dicks, I think it doesn't do anything terribly revolutionary with this novel, but it is very efficiently done in his usual masterful way. There are 12 chapters divided up into the four episodes each of 3 chapters, and the titles of episodes 2, 3, and 4 are used as chapter titles. So we've got The Cave of Skulls is the title of chapter 6, The Forest of Fear is the title of chapter 8, and The Firemaker is the title of chapter 11. A couple of interesting things inside the book. It's on the title page. It is mentioned as being a star book rather than a target book. I'm not sure quite why that should be. Another of the company's imprints, but my copy is autographed by Sir Terrance himself. There you go. That's his lovely autograph. I can't remember when and where this was done, but it's one of the few target books I've actually had autographed. So Terrance makes a number of quite small tweaks, conflations, alterations to the dialogue all the way through. Too many to mention, although some of them are put in very clearly by him in the knowledge and the understanding that people will be reading this book in the 80s. So some people coming to the novelization would probably not have been born, such as me, when Unearthly Child went out on television. So he very helpfully explains, for example, in chapter 1, what a police box is for through the eyes of the policeman in chapter 1, and has him expressing skepticism that one day all policemen will carry their own walkie-talkie radio, as he's been told. That would actually have happened not that long afterwards, in the late 60s, early 70s, as police boxes started to be phased out in favour of radios. Another little nod to the readership is on page 21, where Terrance explains to readers that in 1963, the UK is still following what he refers to as her uniquely complicated monetary system: 4 farthings or 2 halfpennies to the penny, 12 pence to the shilling, and 20 shillings to the pound. Of course, in reference to the fact that Susan doesn't know how many shillings there are in a pound. And Terrance quite rightly presumes that some of his readers may not know this either. There are a couple of pieces of jumping ahead which are quite fun. In chapter 1, the chapter skips ahead to after the adventure has taken place. So after the TARDIS has disappeared, and we're told about the next night when the policeman checked the yard again, but the police box had vanished. Later, he learned that the strange old man who was the junkyard's new proprietor had vanished too, together with his granddaughter, a pupil at the local school. And we're told that in all the resultant fuss, he forgot about the oddly sighted police box, and presumes that it couldn't possibly have had anything to do with the disappearances. After all, you couldn't get 4 people into a police box, could you? I rather like that. At the end of the novel, we also have a throw forward to the next story, which everyone will probably know is the first Dalek story. And we have a couple of paragraphs just telling us about what it lies in store for the Doctor, and references to the Thals and the Khaleds as well. So reference back to Genesis of the Daleks too. So some nice little touches from Terrance there. I liked this one as well. On page 82, there is a reference to what it must be a bit of an in-joke for cheesy film lovers, because Ian in the jungle is trying to remember what animals had been around in the times of the cavemen, and says, no, not dinosaurs, at least. That was a common mistake. Luckily for man, these great monsters had been long extinct. I think this must be a nod to the Raquel Welch film 1 Million Years BC, which was made in 1966, and by the time this novel came out was a regular bank holiday film fixture, and the young readers would almost certainly have got Terrance Dicks' reference and would have seen that film with the anachronistic dinosaurs chasing Raquel Welch around all over the place. I'd certainly seen it and got the reference. There are occasional sort of elaborations and additions of words and phrases for clarity. I won't mention them all, but there's a couple of interesting ones in the discussion around the music that Susan is listening to on her radio. John Smith and the Common Men, and Ian says John Smith is the stage name of the Honourable Aubrey Waits. Said Ian solemnly, it's not so fashionable to be upper class these days. That's a little addition by Terrance, which is rather nice. And an interesting addition about the name Foreman as well, which of course has given rise to all sorts of fan theories and fan fiction. The name I Am Foreman on the gates of the Totters Lane junkyard. The Doctor explicitly says the name was on the notice board and I borrowed it, which is an addition for the novelisation. Couple of things which stand out in the chapters covering the caveman part of the story too. As on television, the Doctor hefts a large rock and advances menacingly on the injured Tsar with this, and his explanation in the script is, well, I was going to get him to draw our way back to the TARDIS. And Ian says, we've been too long as it is the stretcher ready? And Terrance Dicks expands on this a little by having the Doctor say, I was just going to ask him to draw some kind of map on the ground to show us the way back to the TARDIS. So just a bit more explanation for the reader there. And on page 108, there's on television what is some very simple dialogue from Tsar to the cave guard in the Firemaker, which on screen is, I will speak with them, you wait here. Which becomes in the book the rather more wordy, I go in to speak with the strange tribe. If anyone but me comes out, you will kill them. So quite a lot of elaboration. Some interesting pieces of description as well. The Doctor is described as looking like a family solicitor on page 33. There's some really nice viewpointing through Cal when the TARDIS first appears. We see that through the eyes of Cal. A minor addition as well, but a really important one, which is that on page 44, Old Mother, the character of Old Mother, first person to be killed in Doctor Who, is explicitly stated as being Tsar's mother, which she isn't on screen. On screen, she's presumed to be the mother of the tribe, but she is mentioned as being Tsar's mother in the book. And on pages 72 to 73, we get a bit of Old Mother's viewpoint. We get some of her thoughts and a bit more characterization of her, which is nice. When Tsar and her are following the tracks in the jungle, Terrance refers to these as being as clear to them as road signs to a modern motorist. A nice touch again, which the reader can relate to. And a lovely line, I love this line on page 116. It's it shows you how Terrance Dicks is, he's never horrifically violent, but just sometimes he gives a little mention which really just makes you shiver slightly. After the deadly fight between Tsar and Cal, we have as Cal lay there half stunned, Tsar snatched up a great rock and brought it smashing down. And then he says, now there was one more shattered skull in the cave of skulls. Ooh, rather lovely that. Terrance often in the earlier days of the Target books worked from the script rather than a video. I don't know whether from this book he worked from a script or from videotapes, but the suggestion from something in chapter 10 makes me think he was just working from the script, because there's a scene where he describes Cal lying on a flat rock above the cave, which was the intention of the script. But when you watch it, it's clearly been abandoned at recording in favor of Cal skulking at ground level in front of the camera, which presumably was a designer or director decision on the day. So overall, this is one of the shorter Terrance Dicks novelizations at 128 pages. The font is quite large, but there aren't any wasted pages. There's no blanks before the chapter starts. On the whole, it's a very reliable, very workmanlike novelization, and given that Terrance was only given a fortnight to complete this, I think he's done a very good job indeed, with some lovely pieces of viewpointing, some nice little tweaks, some addresses to the reader, some great little touches of characterization and viewpointing and description. And he keeps the pace rattling along as well and keeps the reader engaged throughout. And that really is the mark of a great novelization. So yeah, there you have it. That's a 1980s novelization of a 1960s script. At the time, it was the biggest gap between the story first being shown and the story being novelized. And it was a very successful addition to the target range. As I say, I'm going to be talking about some of the other target books in a bit more depth. I will kind of dot around through the range rather than going in order. Some other things that I've got coming up to talk about on the Blythe Bookshelf. I'm going to be doing some reviews of some modern novels that I've recently read, some of the books that I've been reading in May and June. On the Blythe tapes, I have a couple of interesting interviews coming up. One with a very well-known, very successful writer of commercial women's fiction. And I also have an interview with Helen Bryant from Cornerstones, in which we're going to be talking about editing and being published and the publishing industry. So if you have any interest in being a published author and knowing what happens in the editing process, then do have a listen to that one. Okay, well, that's the Blythe Bookshelf for this time. Thank you very much for listening, as ever, and bye for now.